I grew up in the old north end of Burlington. My father was a laborer working mostly in construction during my childhood. My mother's greatest joy was being a mother, a sentiment perhaps only surpassed by her being a grandmother. She is a nurturer by nature, and to help ends meet, she started taking care of children in our home when I was 1. In my early years, I was surrounded by children, the babies my mother took care of, and the big kids, friends of my siblings who are 8 and 9 years older than I am, who would gather to play wiffle ball in our backyard, which was really a concrete slab. Those kids never slid into home. My siblings were some of my first teachers, dressing me up like Muggins Mouse, a favorite storybook character, reenacting scenes from Little House on the Prairie, and creating elaborate Hot Wheels tracks on the stairways into the living room. I got a good mix of dramatic play and gross motor, but I didn't have much experience with children my own age. Then along came Pat, who worked for Head Start. She came over to my house weekly to work and play with me. We made a skeleton out of paper plates and brass fasteners, popsicles out of bananas dipped in chocolate and rolled in nuts. But most importantly, Pat introduced me to kids my own age. She became the first adult relationship that I made with someone outside my family. She made me feel special. According to my mother, I was special to her as well. Pat remained connected to me and my family. My father broke his neck when I was in kindergarten, after I had aged out of the Head Start program, but Pat came back to take me trick-or-treating. I was really struck by this, that she would spend a holiday with me, just me. It left a huge impression. So it was no surprise that I decided that I wanted to be a teacher when I was in kindergarten. My mother continued to take care of children in our home, and by the time I was graduating high school, I was sure I did not want to work with little kids, the ones who would be napping in my bedroom when I wanted to hang out in there and listen to loud music or the things that teenagers do in their personal space. So I majored in elementary education instead, a sort of rebellion. I got a 1-year substitute job out of college teaching 3rd grade, but I couldn't find another one the next year. With a love of sewing, I took a job at a fabric store, but I was itching to get back into the classroom. A good friend of mine was leaving her position at Robin's Nest Children's Center and suggested that I apply. While it was a classroom, I was disappointed that it was not elementary. Nevertheless, I applied, assuring myself that it would only be for a year with those little kids. Nearly 20 years later, I'm still at Robin's Nest, and I feel that I teach more to these children than I did as an elementary school teacher. The teaching just looks different. Learning alongside children is a joy, and our team approach and multi-age center allows for me to work with some of the same children for up to 5 years, so those relationships are strong. In Robin's Nest, I found a supportive community that always aims to spend what it can on its teachers by way of wages, benefits, and at any time possible, bonuses. When I was expecting my daughter, I considered being a stay-at-home mom, but my husband was quick to point out that I have a necessary income, so I stayed. And the burden of paying for childcare was made lighter by the generous discount on childcare by working at the center. And talk about bonuses. Being able to see firsthand the quality care given to my daughter by the exceptional team of teachers solidified my desire to stay in early education. Though after living in a tiny apartment for 20 years, so small that we called it the compartment, no car, and little for extras, there was definitely a time when I contemplated the move back to teaching in elementary school for higher wages, much like that friend who had tipped me off to the job in the first place. And it is so hard for me to say this because that is not where I belong. But there is a great disparity between the wages of early childhood educators and elementary school teachers. In my first year at Robin's Nest, I was treated to a worthy wage lunch where the center's director explained that there was a movement toward better pay for early educators. Posters around the center pointed out that childcare was just more than milk and cookies. It was my first look at this issue, and ever since I've been holding out hope that real change would happen, and I am thrilled that change is not just on the horizon, it is happening now. When I made the shift from teacher to teaching director of Robin's Nest, it was because I wanted to continue to support not just Robin's Nest, but the field of early childhood education. I knew that I could play a role in supporting the teachers like I had been on that worthy wage day almost 20 years ago. Thankfully, now we have the support of NACCE's Power to the Profession, Let's Grow Kids, and the movement of H171. As much as teachers are dedicated to this field and profession, they may not be willing to make the sacrifices of going without a car or living in a compartment that I did to stay in the field, and they shouldn't have to. We must fund the salaries of early educators to support this vital work that they do every day to ensure that teaching young children doesn't become a stepping stone to an elementary teaching job that pays a little better, but a career where we can make meaningful connections like the one that I had with Pat and keeps us firmly planted in the work that we love.